is naturally generated or is synthetic.
The next Prime Minister of Canada,
We have made this the greatest country in the world, and now our neighbors want to take us.
Donald Trump, he's attacking Canadian families, workers and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. America is not Canada. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form.
A very good morning, viewers. There's been a leadership change that has taken place in Canada. Justin Trudeau has now made way for Mark Carney. What this means and how will this impact the India-Canada relationship, we'll decode that in the next 30 minutes. But let's start the show with headlines coming in. Canada's Liberals overwhelmingly choose former banker Mark Carney with 86% votes to succeed Justin Trudeau as the party leader and the next Prime Minister of Canada. Canada's new Liberal Party leader and PM designate Mark Carney issues stern warning to Washington, says Canada will never become America, says tariffs to stay until Donald Trump shows respect. And all eyes on Mark Carney's promise to work to diversify Canada's trade relationships with like-minded nations, especially India. Big question remains, will Carney reverse Trudeau's anti-India policies and crack down on the Khalistani threat in Canada? So viewers, former governor of the Bank of Canada and Bank of England, Mark Carney, is set to step into the role of the next Prime Minister of Canada, replacing Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation in January. Interestingly, he'll only be the second Prime Minister in Canadian history without a seat in Parliament. Carney, who won the Liberal leadership election by a landslide of 85.9% of the votes, now faces mammoth economic, trade and foreign policy challenges. But the increasingly tense relationship with the United States as trade disputes escalate under Donald Trump's leadership will be his biggest and probably primary challenge. 59-year-old Carney wasted no time in addressing the challenges ahead, particularly the ongoing tariff war with the US that has plagued the Canadian economy for months. Carney's comments echo the growing frustration across Canada, where Americans' economic pressures are being felt at every possible level, from soaring costs of goods to the ongoing uncertainty in the global market. He vowed to keep retaliatory tariffs in place, declaring that Canada will not back down till the US shows respect. The growing nationalism in Canada has led to an unprecedented surge in anti-American sentiment, with many Canadians voicing their anger by boycotting American goods and avoiding travel south of the border. Trump's repeated threats to annex Canada and his harsh trade policies have sparked massive resentment.
There's someone who's trying to do the opposite.
Il y a une personne qui essaie de faire
There's
le
someone who's
contraire,
trying to
qui
weaken
essaie
our
d'affaiblir
economy.
notre économie.
Yeah, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we
Donald
know,
Trump,
has
comme
put,
nous le savons,
as the Prime Minister just said,
et le Premier ministre l'a
unjustified
souligné, a mis de
tariffs
l'avant
on
des
what we
tarifs
build, on
injustifiés
what we
sur tout ce que nous
sell, on
construisons,
how we
vendons
make a
et
living.
comment nous gagnons nos vies.
He's attacking
Il s'est attaqué
Canadian
aux
families,
travailleurs,
workers
aux
and
familles et aux
businesses,
entreprises
and we
canadiennes.
cannot let him
Et on ne peut
succeed.
pas le laisser faire.
And we won't. We won't. The Canadian government
Le gouvernement
has rightly
canadien est
retaliated
allé
and
de
is
l'avant
rightly
avec ses mesures
retaliating
de
with our own
représailles.
tariffs that will
Nous avons
have
nos propres
maximum
tarifs.
impact in the
Cela aura
United
une
States and
incidence
minimum impact
importante aux
here in Canada.
États-Unis avec peu de répercussions ici au Canada.
And my government will keep our tariffs
Nous
on
maintiendrons ces
until the
tarifs
Americans show us
jusqu'à ce que les
respect.
Américains...
America is not Canada.
Les États-Unis, ce n'est
And
pas
Canada
le Canada.
never,
Et
ever
le
will
Canada
be part of
ne fera
America
jamais
in
partie des
any
États-Unis
way, shape, or
d'une
form.
façon ou d'une autre.
Okay, so before we decode what this means for India, for Canada, I want to play out this report that tells you who exactly is Mark Carney, the former central banker who oversaw the response to financial crisis in both North America and the UK.
A man most Canadians barely recognized months ago is now set to become the country's 24th Prime Minister. Mark Carney, a former central banker, will succeed Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation earlier this year. Carney will have just months to rebuild his party for a national election and protect Canada from Donald Trump's tariff threats and even annexation. Carney's story is unique. Born in Canada's Northwest Territories, he grew up in Edmonton, studied at Harvard and Oxford, and spent 13 years at Goldman Sachs. In 2008, he led Canada through the financial crisis as the Bank of Canada's governor. In 2013, he became the first non-British citizen to lead the Bank of England, steering the UK through Brexit. But Carney has never been a career politician. His rise began in 2021 when he aligned with the Liberal Party. By late 2023, Trudeau's popularity was plummeting. When Carney was offered the finance minister post in December, he declined. The move triggered internal turmoil, ultimately forcing Trudeau to step down. Carney now presents himself as a financial expert, not a typical politician. His campaign pitch is simple: fix Canada's economy and push back against Trump's trade threats. When Trump joked about annexing Canada, Carney shot back and said, "We find you attractive, but we're not moving in with you," a line that went viral. And while Carney's background makes him ideal for managing economic turmoil, it also paints him as an outsider, a banker who spent more time working for foreign governments than his own. Yet, Carney's international clout could work in his favour. European leaders like Emmanuel Macron, former UK Chancellor George Osborne have praised his leadership, seeing him as a stabilising force against Trump. For a man who built his career behind closed doors, Mark Carney now finds himself in the heart of Canada's biggest political storm. Winning the election is a milestone, but holding on to power under the looming shadow of Trump's tariffs will be his real test. NDTV World Bureau Report.
Okay, so what does this mean for Canada first, before we come down to ask what it means for India? Joining me are two interesting ladies, Ruby Dhalla, who's a former member of the House of Commons of Canada, and Sharon Kaur, who's a political strategist, someone who understands the Canadian political landscape very well. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me on this broadcast. Sharon, before I come to you, let me quickly rope in Ruby and just quickly ask her this, that, well, Ruby, it's a landslide victory for Carney, and when is he expected to really, and how do you think he's going to drive the country towards elections? Because this is an interim arrangement right now. How do you see the path towards elections from here on for Mark Carney and for Canada?
Well, there is definitely a lot of work to be done by the new leader for the Liberal Party and the new Prime Minister in Canada. There are many challenges that the country is facing, that Canadian families are facing, and most importantly, there is a tariff tax that is being implemented and imposed by the President of the United States of America. So Canada has a lot of challenges, and people are looking for the new leader and the Prime Minister to go to an election within the coming weeks.
And also, Ruby, there's been a surge in the popularity of the Liberal Party. In fact, the Conservative majority that was expected in Parliament just a couple of months back now seems absolutely unlikely. They've arrested their free fall. How do you see that now impacting the larger political landscape in which Mark Carney is going to operate?
I think only time is going to, tell. It ultimately it'll be in an election campaign where the Canadian voters will decide, which vision they want for the future of Canada and for the leadership that they would like for their families, for Canada's economy, for Canada's workers, because of the number of challenges. So I think that, when you're in the political world, a day is a lifetime in politics, and party fortunes, change day in and day out. And ultimately, it'll be the Canadian voters that will decide who will be elected as Canada's next government to lead it into the coming years.
He's only the second Prime Minister in Canadian history without a seat in Parliament. Many say he lacks political experience. He hasn't been in government. How do you see that impacting what's going to be, a very significant set of challenges that Mr. Carney will have to address right away?
Well, I can only base it, on my experience. As you will know, that I was a candidate in the leadership race for the Liberal Party of Canada, and also to become Canada's next Prime Minister. It was very historic. I am the first woman from the Indo-Canadian community, the first woman of color to actually run for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada. And I spoke in my campaign about bringing the party back to the center with some really progressive policy ideas that were the need of the hour, because I have not been involved in the Ottawa bubble and the Trudeau government for the last 10 years, but have really been living in the real world and focusing, on business, and focusing really on talking to Canadians and hearing about the many challenges that they are facing, for the increased cost of homes in the country, the increase in gas prices, increasing grocery prices, the threats of, the tariffs that are being implemented by President Trump in the United States. And as our campaign was growing, as we were building momentum, all of a sudden I was disqualified, and the party didn't realize of how much it would actually backfire, because people's anger across the country, across all party lines, just erupted. We had 5.8 million people alone on Twitter that engaged with us, another 4.8 million people on Instagram that engaged with us because they were so angry at the Liberal Party for this attack on democracy, this attack on justice, this attack on fairness. And people wanted to have, the right to be able to choose, to select who their next leader was going to be, and to actually have their vote and their voice in who the next Prime Minister for Canada was going to be. And going back to your question about, Mr. Carney's inexperience, I have actually been in 4 elections, and I have won 3 of those elections as a member of Parliament. So both myself and the others that were in the race, except for Mark Carney, we are actually already battle tested, and I was battle ready because I've been through the election process. So no one really knows how Mr. Carney is going to perform. But what ended up coming out as a result of my disqualification is that they, the establishment did not want to have Ruby Dalla on the debate floor because she might be too aggressive for Mr. Carney. So when I hear those types of, remarks being passed by various party officials and other Canadians, hear of the fact that the Liberal Party establishment did not want Ruby Dalla on that debate floor, they become a little bit skeptical at the ability of, Mr. Mark Carney now as the leader to be able to take on the opposition leader who has spent his career in politics and is actually a very, very strong debater as well. And, we will know from running election campaigns, you have to know your issues. You have to know how to, how to debate, and you have to be battle tested and battle ready when you're going into this type of environment. So only time is going to tell what Mr. Carney's performance will be like in the coming days and the coming weeks.
All right. Let's leave it there, Ruby, and let's ask this to Sharon, that, who's battle ready, who's battle tested, and what's the size and scale of the battle that Mark Carney is really looking at. And I guess, Sharon, the biggest battle that awaits him, of course, is the Trump tariffs. They kick in on the 2nd of April. There may have been some carve-outs, but Mr. Trump is very clear. Those tariffs are coming. A trade war is on its way.
And I'm going to get to that, but I want to go back to 1 second here because you have a panelist on here who just said a whole bunch of stuff that's not actually true. Listen, this today was about the new leader being elected. It was not a discussion about Ruby Dalla being disqualified for valid reasons. You cannot throw out these 5.8 million numbers. Twitter, X, these are not barometers for anything. So please, let's just cut that out and cut the crap on this. Mark Carney won because he.
Let's focus on Mr. Carney. Let's focus on Canada. Let's focus on Mr. Carney.
I'm talking about that. Mark Carney ran a campaign that was extremely strong. He is a two-time central bank governor. You might not agree with the methods of how leadership battles happen, but there are checks and measures that are put in place. And Mark Carney checked all those checks and balances off.
Absolutely, he did.
Some candidates were disqualified for valid reasons, but he is someone who has experience. And when it comes to dealing with someone like Donald Trump, we're looking at an American government that did not have a lot of respect for the Trudeau administration for a variety of reasons. They dealt with NAFTA negotiations the first time around. I was part of those discussions. I saw the dynamics. So Mark Carney coming in now as the PM and as the leader will change that channel. It'll change that channel. He dealt with Brexit. He is.
How will that change that channel? That's a very important point and pretty much at the center of what Canadians would also be expecting from Mr. Carney. So how will that change? How will that relationship with Mr. Trump change under Mark Carney?
I think you have to look at it from the perspective of this is a bit of a fresh page. I don't think it's going to change Donald Trump's perspective completely. But if you remove Trudeau out of that question, which was his biggest, I would say, he called him governor, the 51st state. He had no respect for him. And I think with someone like Mark Carney, who is used to dealing with that type of personality, I think we will see that. But we're already seeing a shift with the retaliatory tariffs. We're seeing that with our provincial premier, Doug Ford, who's pushed back with cutting off electricity or tariffing the electricity. So we will see a shift in that. But it's only been a few hours. I think we have to give it a couple of days to see where he goes and whether he has a new cabinet come into place. But I would say for our international media colleagues, definitely expect a change in tone and tenor coming out of the U.S.
All right, Sharon, thanks much for giving that perspective. And maybe the next couple of days, you and I will have this chat again to talk more about what is the kind of transformation that Canada is hoping that Mark Carney will bring in terms of their relationship with the U.S. All right, shifting focus now, Justin Trudeau's handling of India-Canada relations is something that I want to focus on. And remember, it left a very sharp impact as far as the diplomatic and economic disaster that happened. And Mark Carney is determined. Shots of him with business leaders are there. Now Mark Carney steps in with a bold promise to rebuild the crucial trade ties with Trudeau that have been shattered in the past. But can Carney really fix what Trudeau broke? This report tells you.
This Canadian leader, Mark Carney, has vowed to rebuild Canada's strained trade ties with India, a relationship that crumbled under the Trudeau government. Speaking in Calgary, Carney said he will rebuild the trade partnership with India, calling it crucial to diversifying Canada's economy. He added that a shared sense of values would be key to this commercial relationship, signaling a major reset after years of diplomatic chaos. And Carney may just be the right man to clean up Trudeau's mess. Until January this year, he was chair of the board at Brookfield Asset Management, a global investment firm that holds over $30 billion worth of assets in India. Carney has seen firsthand the potential of India's economy, and now he wants Canada to capitalize on it. But Carney is walking into a disaster Trudeau left behind. In 2023, Justin Trudeau accused India of being involved in the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. What followed was a diplomatic disaster. Trade talks were frozen, diplomatic ties nosedived to say the least, and any hope of any trade deal vanished. Trudeau's handling of the crisis didn't just cost Canada politically, it cost the country billions in potential trade. Under his government, India, one of the world's fastest growing economies, turned its back on Canada. And now Carney is promising to fix what Trudeau broke. His promise has already drawn praise from Canadian business groups who see Carney's global experience as a chance to restore economic ties with India. But fixing the damage won't be easy. With Donald Trump threatening to slam Canada with heavy tariffs, Carney's first few months in office could be defined by two urgent tasks: protecting Canada's economy from Trump and salvaging what's left of the country's relationship with India. Restoring this critical trade partnership could unlock billions in economic potential, reshaping Canada's global standing and economic future. But if he fails, it would cement Trudeau's legacy as the man who destroyed one of Canada's most promising global partnerships. For now, Carney is campaigning to undo Trudeau's foreign policy disaster and rebuild Canada's relationship with India from scratch. With Rhythm Arcadia, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
All right, let's get in Daniel Bodman and Manjeev Singh Puri to talk more about what is exactly at stake here and can Mark Carney really fix it. Daniel, let me start with you. The India-Canada relationship probably saw its nadir under Justin Trudeau. Do you expect Mark Carney to be able to repair it?
No, it all depends. It's a triangle between different things. It depends on how serious India is about the Khalistan issue, right? Because Mark Carney, unlike Trudeau, might not go full on the open woke nonsense, but Mark Carney's fully backed by all the nefarious factors that backed Trudeau. He's deeply in bed with the CCP. All the Khalistanis and Muslim Brotherhood MPs immediately backed Carney because it wasn't really an election, it was a selection. What our previous guest said about there being checks and balances inside a Canadian electoral race is an absolute lie. There are no checks and balances in internal party Canadian elections. Federal elections between parties are real, but when there's a internal party election, Liberal, Conservative, NDP, it's a fourth world banana republic system where the party basically gets to select who they want and then investigate themselves if there's any wrongdoing. So Mark Carney was actually the architect of most of Trudeau's economic policies. He's huge on green energy, mass migration. He moved his company, Brookings, that you talked about, to the United States from Canada. So he's had a hand in every failed policy that Justin Trudeau's ever designed. Now, with the Liberals and Mark Carney, it is probably true that he's still going to be fully embedded with the Khalistanis, fully embedded with the CCP. But what is likely is if India or Indian businessmen want to bribe him, give donations to his wife's company or do business with his wife's company, the Asia Group, they would probably get special favors by playing sort of standard liberal politics here.
Okay.
So if that's going to fix the India relationship, maybe. But again, there's a nexus he has to work with because he has to, I mean, the fight between Canada and India has the Americans somewhat in the middle because our entire case against India rests on American intelligence, like most Canadian intelligence cases do, rests fully on American intelligence. So unless he's willing to just go out and say, mea culpa, we were wrong on all of that, which he might, but then he'll face an uproar from the Khalistani base in his party. So if he's willing to just shoo that away, that'd be interesting. But it would be up to Carney, and I don't really see that happening.
Ambassador Puri, you want to come in there? There are expectations, but Daniel seems to be doing some sort of a reality check here.
Gauri, good morning, and thank you for having me in the program. I found this fascinating to hear three Canadians talk about their own country. Look, as an outsider, and frankly, they know their country better, it would appear to me that for the moment, the Liberal Party has made the best possible choice. They've chosen a technocratic person, somebody who knows the economy, somebody who's known in the world, and so therefore, how it went, what can I say? Relations with India, look, they can only go northwards. There should be no two ways about it. But let's also understand, for the moment, Mr. Carney's greatest preoccupation have to be the Canadian economy, the situation vis-a-vis the United States, and the upcoming elections, which should be announced very soon. We are, yes, we think we are big players, but that's not necessarily the case. My own view, and I am subject to correction by those who live in that country, is that the elections may result in diminishing the parties which resulted in Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party being a bit beholden politically.
Okay, so Jagmeet Singh could be defeated. And, I'm running out of time, but a quick question from both of you. Yeah. Let's keep it short. Justin, Daniel, do you see that Jagmeet Singh's party could be diminished in the upcoming elections and that could have a larger impact?
Yeah, Jagmeet Singh's party is doing terribly. They could turn this around if Jagmeet Singh decides to take the manna that fell from heaven and attack the global banker who calls himself a European citizen with 3 different passports and who moved his company to America, instead of attacking the conservative opposition. Then the NDP could pull through this. But if Jagmeet Singh continues to do the thing he's currently doing, the party will be obliterated, as it's currently looking like in the polls.
All right, let's leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's early days for Mark Carney as he is yet to walk into office to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. He has only limited time. He has to call elections. He's going to lead the Liberal Party, who's now, of course, recovered from the free fall in its ratings. He has a lot on his plate, but of course, recovery and reviving the India-Canada relationship should be a key priority and focus for Mark Carney. Thank you so much for watching this special show with me, Gauri Trivedi. AI scientist, and some would even call him a rock star in the AI space.
We definitely need AI for is to unlock some of the mysteries of nature.
As someone who is an AI scientist, what is your goal?
Our civilization is facing a number of sort of challenges, and I think this is where AI comes into the picture.
Will this replace most jobs?
The new generation of AI models is that they have cognitive ability.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
Why is that lingering fear there about, will this replace most jobs? I mean, and how does one address that lingering doubt about a tech breakthrough?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to think about the new generation of AI models is that they have cognitive abilities. They are able to solve cognitive tasks. Now, if you think about the history of technology, when calculators came out, right, there were people who used to do those very cumbersome mathematical sort of calculations, which now did not need to do them by hand, but could use calculators. So in the same way, there will be certain types of tasks and certain types of activities that these models will be able to do. And I think the right thing that we will need to do is basically figure out how should we leverage them. And then the productivity gains that we get, how do we then invest those productivity gains towards solving newer problems? So if there are people, if we have more time now because we are more productive and we have access to these tools, the thing that society needs to ask itself is to how do we take on that extra amount of productivity that we have, and where should we focus it?
Okay,
and the answer that I would like that I would propose is basically there are so many challenges that we are facing. In fact, we should be thinking about using any sort of our brain power that we can get towards those things.
I would probably see this that the era of generalists may be over and the era of experts may probably be dawning upon us. But let's now look at some of those specifics in terms of first and foremost life sciences and medical research, simply because of the impact on humanity may be just so intense and life changing. How do you see that? You've also done a lot of work in that area. whether it is about pandemics or whether it's about cures or prevention. How do you see what has been achieved so far? And if we can do some sort of a crystal ball gazing as to what are we really looking at in terms of outcomes for the future?
Yeah, so I think biology.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
A very good morning. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Divya Vava. We have a whole lot lined up for you, including the budget session that resumes this morning. It's expected to be a stormy one. We'll get you all the details. First, let's get you the headlines. Second leg of Parliament's budget session with the focus, as far as the government's concerned, on the Waqf bill and the opposition's push for language delimitation and the tariffs by the United States. In the Hampi gang rape case, the third accused has now been arrested. He had fled to Chennai. He's been arrested from there. Now, all three have been arrested.